Hello! So today I wanted to talk about, or rant about, my rather disappointing first cardiology appointment. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was in October anyway. There'd been an awful long wait for that appointment in that as I explained in my last video, I'd waited 4 months for the appointment, which is kind of the standard wait time under the NHS for non-urgent referrals to cardiology. It felt like there was quite a lot riding on that appointment, in that I'd been continuing to see my GP with quite debilitating symptoms, and she was kind of saying, "I'll just wait to be seen by cardiology and then hopefully we can get this more under control." So yeah, it felt like everything was kind of building up to that appointment, and I did prepare myself to not expect too much, because I have had the experience before of going through neurology, because I think it was a few years ago I started suffering from seizures, and so I was referred to neurology, had lots of different tests, and my seizures were found to be non-epileptic. I have thought with hindsight that in my view, I feel like perhaps some of those seizures, there were PoTS symptoms at play, but just nobody knew what it was at the time. But that's just a theory of mine and probably for another video. So yes, I had the experience before where you wait for months for this referral, you feel like your life's on hold, and all it is like a 10 to 15 minute consultation, no real answers, just referral for more referrals for yet more tests, and so essentially nothing kind of changes as a result of that appointment. So I wasn't expecting much, I was almost preparing myself to be disappointed, which I don't know, it might have been, it was kind of the best way I could think of in terms of dealing with it, not to expect too much. But I was left feeling even more disappointed than I expected, which wasn't great. Hoping some of this might help people having their first cardiology appointment to know a bit more about what to expect. In my case, I got there and I had to have an ECG before, which I do find quite stressful, but actually I felt like I got that down in that I had the worst experience possible in A&E, having an ECG, in that they had to try about 3 different machines, they got all the stickers on and had to do it again twice more because the machine apparently wasn't working. So I kind of felt like I had the worst possible experience at anything else where it's a lot more straightforward, they're very quick and they do it kind of every day and it's all working, that I've kind of got that down, I can cope with that. Friend with me to the appointment, which was really helpful. It's just sometimes reassuring to have someone there when you haven't been to that part of a hospital before, and it was also good to kind of have someone else to take in what was being said in the consultation and ask questions that perhaps I hadn't thought of, or just in the moment I'd forgotten to ask. My ECG, then I think I had my blood pressure tested, and then I waited for my consultation. I saw the registrar cardiologist, and he seemed pretty young. As a positive, he was pretty friendly, he's fairly easy to talk to, so it could have been worse in that respect. And also he did seem quite accepting of a PoTS diagnosis, in that I got in there and he said that he had heard from my GP and from the discharge from A&E that I seemed to be presenting with PoTS symptoms, and that my standing ECG kind of confirms that, and he said yes, it does seem to look like PoTS. So that was good, because I have heard that unfortunately from other people who've suffered with PoTS, that not all cardiologists are particularly specialised in PoTS, and some actually don't accept it as a diagnosis. So that was positive in that at least he was kind of accepting of that as the most probable diagnosis. Something I did notice is that he seemed a bit overly confident in that he was like, if it's PoTS, then don't worry about that, it can be treated, it's not a problem, we can sort that. Whereas from what I've heard from others, like, it's not that straightforward in that there isn't like one treatment that is known to work for everyone with PoTS. It's more a case of trial and error, and there's no cure, it's more a case of managing symptoms, and it's quite a long process. So that did make me feel, I don't know, I don't know if he was trying to be reassuring by being, and positive by being a bit kind of overconfident, but it didn't feel like very realistic to me. It was a very brief consultation, like it was probably 15 minutes max, probably nearer to 10 minutes. It was very like brisk, which I'm used to with kind of medical doctors, in that they seem to be very clear on what they want to know and just want to receive the answers to the questions that they need to know. So he just asked me some very kind of brief standard questions about my symptoms, agreed that it did sound like a classic case of PoTS. He took down what medications that I was on at the moment. The outcome, which was kind of the disappointing bit, so the outcome was kind of like, he said, yep, it absolutely does sound like PoTS, but before we even go along down the lines of diagnosis and treatment, we need to do some more ruling out of something more serious, as they say. And I felt like I'd already had quite a lot of ruling out in getting, like, because in order to have like the cardiology referral, I had to have blood tests, ECGs, and I did feel quite reassured already that it wasn't something more serious. Like, everything I've experienced seemed to fit with PoTS. He referred me for an echocardiogram, which has been a bit of a nightmare to sort out, but I'll probably talk about that another time, and also like a 24-hour blood pressure and heart rate monitor. And then he said, and yes, we'll get those tests done in the meantime, and we'll review you in 6 months. And that was just kind of like the standard, I guess, like protocol to follow, that in non-urgent cases you're just reviewed in 6 months. And when I heard that, my heart really did sink, because I was thinking to myself like, oh, that's like 6 months of the same. So no like confirmed diagnosis, no kind of treatment plan, just managing as best I can and having all these tests which aren't really getting to the actual problem. The only real advice that he offered was basically not to have a bath, and because of risk of like fainting and drowning, basically. I mean, all the advice was basically just don't die. Told that I definitely couldn't drive. I was told also that if I was to have like a bath or shower, that I should leave the door unlocked, and I explained that I actually live alone. He seemed quite surprised. It was just like kind of the dishing out like just the standard advice, like safety advice, and also like I was told that I can't cook, to be careful when handling hot or sharp objects, and yeah, I think something like my friend said, which I was thinking in my head, like obviously it had been 4 months for me to wait for that appointment, and I had my symptoms that became quite severe within the last few months, and it was kind of like, what does he imagine that I've been doing in this time? It did feel all like very restrictive, I guess, and maybe like not so realistic. And the way I've kind of seen it is that I've just got to find a way to function, and that I live on my own, and the reality is that there's no one else to like prepare food for me or anything like that. And like in terms of not having a bath, like I have survived for the past few months having the odd bath if I'm careful about the when I do it, not making it too hot, drinking water while I'm in the bath, using my shower seat to get out. And I think you have to think for yourself like about your overall quality of life, and the having a bath like might flare up my PoTS symptoms, but in another sense like it's something that I find really relaxing. Sometimes I think you do have to kind of not go against medical advice, but keep it all in mind and just find like a system that works best for you, because everybody is different, and I feel like they often just kind of put out there the standard kind of advice. And yeah, what I have found like with medical doctors is that quite often they kind of see a person in terms of like their symptoms, so they're presented with these symptoms and it's like they just offer general advice on how to manage them, but they don't really think about how those symptoms affect someone in their everyday life. And obviously like I am grateful that it doesn't appear to be something more serious or life-threatening, but at the same time PoTS is very debilitating, and it has had a huge impact on my life, and yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult when it feels as though somebody's not really considering what your daily life is like and the implications of the advice that they're giving. Something that I found like quite frustrating kind of following my appointment that I kind of thought to myself, like, while they're doing the test to rule out other things, that doesn't really prevent them from doing the test for PoTS, because I might have PoTS, like even if there is something else going on, I might still have PoTS. It doesn't really kind of, they don't have to just look at one or the other, and it would make more sense to, while I'm having the other test done, to also refer me for the tilt table test where it's getting closer to actually being able to treat the actual problem. So I didn't really understand the logic behind that, so I went to my GP. So sorry, the video must have cut out because I think my battery died and it kind of cut off the end bit, so filming this a little bit in the future. I went to my GP, I think that's what I was saying, and she was also like disappointed with the outcome of the cardiology appointment, because she was kind of expecting that even in my first cardiology appointment that they would kind of be looking towards the tilt table test and diagnosing PoTS, because it had already been quite a long time coming and there was quite a lot of confirmation that that was looking to be the actual problem. So what she's going to do is get in contact with the cardiology team and ask whether I could have the tilt table test while having the other tests. So that's feeling a little bit more hopeful. It did make me feel a bit better, because she agreed it didn't really make any logical sense as to why they couldn't go ahead with the test. I was obviously quite upset at the time, like on the day of my cardiology appointment, because it was disappointing, but at the same time I did seem to kind of move on quite quickly. In a way, the way I see it is that I wasn't holding out much hope anyway, with the kind of treatment side of things in terms of like medication, because in any case like PoTS can only really be managed, and I would be wanting to try out anything that could improve my symptoms, but at the same time the general process is finding a way that works for you to manage your symptoms and like figuring it out myself, and that kind of, I just felt like that was just going to continue, and that was okay. That's all what I'm used to now. I really hope though that for other people, if you have like a cardiology appointment, that your first cardiology appointment, that it is a little bit better than mine, like a more positive experience. Like mine wasn't awful, I do get that it could have been worse, but yes, I would hope that it might be better for other people. I'd be really interested to hear your experiences in terms of like how long it's taken like to get a PoTS diagnosis, and like what the diagnostic process was like. I'd be really interested to hear your experiences, and yes, thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll hear from me again soon. Okay, bye.